Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and another Halloween video. As always, I will link to my playlist at the end of this video that I'll keep adding to as I make Halloween cards. Today's one uses no Halloween supplies at all except for one thing. Because it's always fun for me to find ways to make something Halloween that wouldn't, if that makes sense. So I sprinkle those in. I'll never not love specific Halloween dyes, stamps, all the things. Love. But it's fun. And it also is a fun way to give ideas because I know a lot of people say they like the idea of doing Halloween cards, but they just don't have, enough reason to. So the one little supply I used is something that it's like, oh, you could add that to an order and make regular cards Halloween themed. Why not? So anyway, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. And yeah, let's get into making the card. So I pulled out the Delicate Blossoms stamp set. That's going to be the main focus. And I've done this many times with different floral sets over the years. Florals work for Halloween. It's fun. All you gotta do is do it in Halloween colors. Or even non-Halloween colors. I've done florals and still made it a Halloween card and used pinks and grays and sky's the limit. Anyway, I have some watercolor paper. And I use my anti-static powder tool on it. That just keeps the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped image. And I had lined up the stamp on my MISTI, and I am inking up the stamp with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And I'm going to ink this up and stamp this a couple times. This watercolor paper is not super textured. It does have a slightly smoother side. Most watercolor paper does have a smoother side. However, when you're stamping a large stamp like this with a lot of detail, this is where I use my MISTI. I talk about using background stamps a lot, and 99% of the time I just use them, face up on my desk, press the paper in, go on about my day. But with something in this, that's my focus, that's the focus of the card, there's all this detail, I'm going to watercolor this, etc. That's where I use the stamp positioner to make sure I get it stamped and then can re-stamp it. So after I've got it stamped, I am coating it with clear embossing powder. It doesn't have to be heat embossed. I could go right in and start watercoloring. This ink is great for that. It won't bleed or smear or anything when I watercolor, but I do the heat embossing because one, it's going to give it a little bit of a shiny finish, which is nice. And two, those raised edges keep everything a little more contained. And then I don't have to be so careful with my watercoloring because I just don't have the time or patience. And as it is, I spent a chunk of time watercoloring this because I was enjoying the process. So after I melted everything with my heat tool, made sure it was smooth and melted, I am taping this down to a hardboard. This is my go-to hardboard I've had for a bajillion years. And I'm just using a low-tack tape. This one specifically is, your Scotch painter's tape, just something low-tack. And I'm taping this down because one, this watercolor paper is a little thinner. I really like this stuff, but it is thinner and I'm going to watercolor this entire background. So taping your watercolor paper down just enables it to stay flat while you're adding water, all the things. And it also makes it easier too because I'm going to be turning this around a bit, especially when I'm painting the background. So I've got it all taped down. And then for my watercoloring, I'm using the Altenew Artist Watercolor Palette. And I pulled out the colors I planned on using. One for convenience, because, I don't have the space for the whole palette right in front of me. But also to keep me a little more focused, because I will sometimes overwhelm myself and be like, well, I could add this color and this color. And I could mix colors, And I was like, no, let's just stick to 3. It'll end up being 4 because I pull in orange for the flower centers. But 3 colors. So I've got a purple, a black, and a green, which specifically in that palette was Shades of Purple, Rock Collection, Rainforest. And for the actual watercoloring, this first little bit here is a little bit sped up. It's not exactly real time, but just a smidge sped up. But all I'm doing is I wet the area first with just clean water. And then I use a second brush and pick up the watercolor. And then with these florals, I drop the color in at like the base of each petal. And then I pull it out with that first brush that just has a little bit of water on it. And then I just keep repeating this over and over again to do all of these florals. And yeah, that's literally it. And because everything was heat embossed, that's why I can do all these petals back to back to back, like all next to each other, and nothing's like running into each other and just turning into like a blob. Everything's contained within its own little space, thanks to that heat embossing, which it just acts like bumper pads, and I love it. I love it because, like I said, I don't have the patience. Every once in a blue moon, I'll do, no line watercolor or, something like a little fancier, which is fun, but so often I just don't have the patience. That said, in all truth and honesty, this took me about an hour. Like I sat and watercolored and just enjoyed the process. It's been a hot minute since I've done, any watercoloring, and I liked it. I liked it. And having just my colors picked out and just sitting in front of me and just sticking to that was also kind of nice. So I'm not, overthinking it and trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like, no, we're just going to color. That's it. So now this is super sped up. Super, super sped up. And yeah, this is one way to make something very non-Halloween into Halloween themed. Just use Halloween colors, So purple, black, green, orange. But again, like I said, you could do whatever you want, I could have done these in pinks and aquas and whatever, and still made it a Halloween card because I don't care. There are no rules. You do what you want. But that is also a nice thing about something like with florals. I can make a floral into anything. I'll do a floral Halloween card. I'll do a floral Christmas card. I will do a floral, I don't know, whatever. Florals work for anything. So the nice thing though too about a stamp like this is if you just like, I don't want to color nothing. I don't like to color. Coloring is not my thing. I don't want to color. Don't want to watercolor, none of it. A stamp like this is still nice. I did a video using this stamp and I didn't do any coloring. I heat embossed it and then I did ink blending. And I will link to that video at the end of this one too. So that's always a nice option is it's like, oh, if you want to have like a floral stamp, but you don't want to color, that's another way to kind of incorporate that into your crafting. If you just do not like coloring, is do something like the stamp and ink blend. And then, yeah, I've shown other things over the years too, using like shimmer powders and just dropping them on, all of it. This type of watercoloring is honestly not hard to do. It's just, you just take your time and work a little section by section. So I did all the flowers first. I did the flower centers. The greenery I did with the black. Again, we're doing Halloween. And then the background I did green, like this really bright, like lime green. And it was fun. It was fun. And again, this is a stamp where it's like, you just change the colors and it just creates a totally different mood. And I could have done, and this could still be a non-Halloween card. The only thing that's going to make this Halloween is a sentiment. This could just be anything, really. Just a fun, different color combo. So, when I was done watercoloring, I let it dry completely. If you have taped it down, it needs to be dry. Because if it's not, and you go to pull the tape away, it could peel and start to shred. So you don't want that. So let it dry. Didn't take very long. Just let it fully dry. I removed the tape by pulling it against itself. And then I stuck this in my splat box because, of course, we're going to add splatter. And, of course, it's going to be black splatter. So I use a little bit of my black gouache. Put that on my palette. Get my little fan brush out. And water this down a bit to get it into a more liquid consistency. And then splatter this onto this entire background. And again, black splatter intimidates a lot of people. You don't have to do it if you don't like it. But if you're interested in splatter, shimmer works. A shimmer splatter or white, the white gouache. Highly recommend that. I use that all the time. And then you can work your way up to the black splatter because it freaks people out. But I love it. Whether it's Halloween themed or not, you guys know I use black splatter on almost everything. I don't know. It scratches an itch, man. So I added the black splatter, immediately cleaned everything up, and again, let this dry. Once it was dry, I trimmed this down to A2 size because the panel originally was about 4.5 by 6 inches. And I trimmed it down to 4.25 inches by 5.5 inches. So I used my guillotine trimmer, and because I wanted this to completely cover my card base. So after I got it trimmed down, I'm going to use one of the Petal tipped labels wafer dies to die cut this. And normally I do not get this finicky. When I was making this, I was having the watercoloring was fine. It was everything else. It was from like this point onwards that my brain just was not working as well, in a sense. I talk about this a lot. I usually eyeball everything. I don't really worry too much about lining things up perfectly, etc. But with this one, just my brain was just not seeing it, and I was having a hard time. So I used my little T-square ruler to get this lined up. I love the Petal tip labels. When they came out, I was like raving about it. I was like, I love these types of like decorative shape, like layering dies. This one, because I wanted it centered, and also it's sort of oval shaped. I've talked about this in the past. Oval shapes, I struggle with. It's like my brain cannot get them straight, if that makes sense. So this one was kind of eluding me, and it just took me a little bit. So I used my T-square ruler just to make sure it was centered, because I'm going to use both pieces. If I was only just going to die cut and just keep the die cut piece, I wouldn't have cared. I would have slapped the die on, die cut it, moved on. But I wanted it centered because I'm going to use both pieces on my finished card. So ruler to the rescue, it worked. And then I used the larger wafer die, like the one size up, and I'm die cutting some vellum, which I don't end up using. But I'll just stick that vellum die cut in with the wafer dies. The next time I go to use this die set, I'll be like, ooh, I'll have this shape already die cut. Perfect. So my original plan was to layer that under the die cut floral and have the vellum peeking out. But when I did it for this card, I was like, it's too subtle. It was just, I wasn't feeling it. Like I let it sit there for a bit. I kind of went on and did something else. And then I came back to it and I was like, no, it's just too subtle. So I just used the same wafer die and die cut black cardstock. And yeah, perfect. Love it. That's what it needed. So my stamp was still in the MISTI. I just left there. I'd cleaned everything off. And my card base is a top folding A2 white note card. So 4.25 by 5.5 inches. And I put my trusty piece of Post-it tape right at the score line so I don't get ink past the score line. And I'm going to line this up in my MISTI again and just kind of make sure that the inside of the card is kind of lined up with the stamp, so the whole stamp's going to cover. And then I'm going to ink this up with Simon's Lilac Positively Saturated ink, just a very nice light purple. So I'll add the pattern to the inside of the card. And after I stamp that, I can just take the card base out of my MISTI, put that piece of Post-it tape back on my die cut machine, because like I always say, I reuse those until there's just nothing left of it. So after I'd done that, I can adhere the frame from the card front that I had watercolored. I'm going to adhere that to the card base with my the Positively Perfect craft glue. So I'm going to put that on there and then adhere that. And then the die cut pieces, I'm going to adhere together with Simon's Big Mama foam tape just to give it a little smidge of dimension. So I'm going to put that on the back of there and then press that into the black cardstock frame. And then that piece, I'm just going to glue directly down to the background. So again, because also I used the black, I didn't need to line up that first one, if that makes sense. That was the other reason why I was so particular about getting that die lined up on the watercolored background, because with the vellum, you would have seen exactly where everything was. You know what I mean? And no regrets, but it was what it was. So, speaking of my difficulties, this was the only Halloween supply, and that's what I was referring to in the intro. These little pre-printed sentiment strips, these are the spooky salutations, or reverse spooky salutations. And you get a pack of however many sheets, and it's only a few dollars. This is what I meant. It's like, this is something you can just like throw in the cart with whatever else you're ordering. And it's like, there you go. You've got some Halloween sentiments, and then you could make a Halloween card with non-Halloween supplies, you know? They're handy little things. You can also foil them if you have like a laminator or like the fuse foiling machine or the Mink machine, because these are printed on cardstock with toner ink. But yeah, I rarely foil them. I trim them down. This is where I ended up like just being able to salvage this Halloween wishes sentiment. I was having a hard time lining everything up. My brain didn't work so good this session. But in the end, it still worked. So I was like, you know what? I win. The stubbornness won. That's all this was. I was just going on like pure stubbornness. Anyway, I used a black marker after I trimmed down those little sentiments. I used a black marker to cover the edges of the cardstock. It just covers that exposed white edge and makes everything look a little more seamless. And any black marker will work for this. And at this point, I was like, yep, pulling in the T-square ruler again to make sure I got the sentiments lined up, because I was like, I'm not. Usually I just don't care and I'm fine. It's like, eyeball it. It doesn't need to be perfect. But yeah, I was on the struggle bus. It was kind of crazy. Some days are like that. Anyway, I had trimmed down another sentiment, and I just, cut it apart from that little reverse spooky salutations sentiment pack, and then added that to the inside as well. And then I couldn't resist adding a dragonfly to this, because why not? I love dragonflies. And I love this little die. This is the bright dragonfly wafer die. The body I die cut from Simon's orange peel cardstock, and the wings I die cut from Simon's shimmer vellum. Love. And because they're vellum, and because the die pierces all that detail, the wings naturally just curl up. Love it. Love it. It builds all that dimension with zero effort. It's so good. So I assembled him, and then I'm going to glue him onto my card, just like so. And he's super cute. So I'm going to pop him into place. And then my final little bit of embellishment is is it Mandarin? Yes, Mandarin Pawsitively Dazzling gems, which I love the containers. I'll sit here and just like play with the containers. Anyway, I pulled those out, and I'll add a few of those just to add a little bit more orange to this card. And then once I've got my placement, I just pick them up with my little embellishment wand and then adhere them into place with little dabs of glue. And I just got to let the glue dry, and this card is complete. So, other than those little sentiment strips, everything else is non-Halloween. It's just fun. So we've got watercolor and the shine from the heat embossing, and then the Pawsitively Dazzling gems and the shimmer vellum to add a little bit extra, And that was it. So like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!